Welcome to Beyond the Diploma, where we discuss navigating the university experience in Canada and share insight and tools for success. I'm Octavian Turner, and I'm an undergraduate chemistry student at the University of British Columbia and a clinical research assistant in the Division of General Surgery at Vancouver General Hospital. Today, my guest is Sebastian Carthy. Sebastian is a commerce student with major in economics and concentration in information technology management at McGill University. He's a Senior Analyst for ConnectUS McGill, which connects students with local businesses and nonprofits to help address their existing organizational challenges. He has experience working with teams drafting business proposals, helping businesses diversify operations, and evaluate their impact. As VP of Events for McGill Students Trading Society, he organizes trading competitions and networking opportunities for members, helping foster a community for commerce students. After his first year, he got an internship at Paladin Technologies, where he worked with the Enterprise Resource Planning team to help implement Microsoft Dynamics 365 and unify systems across the organization. Today's discussion covers his experience in the DeSautel Faculty of Management at McGill, the application process, his advice, resources for students, and how to get ahead. Sebastian Carthy, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So our first section is about the Bachelor of Commerce program at McGill. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, which universities you applied to?
Yeah, so I'm from Vancouver, went to Kits High School, and basically I was looking for a program that would give me kind of a general education and something that would challenge me, but also set me up for like a career and something that I wanted to do. So I was interested in business programs, and I looked at a few different across the country, and I applied kind of all over. Probably to too many schools, which I think a lot of people maybe end up doing by mistake. So I ended up getting into McGill, and that was really the most prestigious program that I got into, and also the one that I was most looking forward to going to.
Right.
Because Montreal is just a great city, and it was a good program and all that. So I got my acceptance, and once I was accepted in McGill, it was the last school I got accepted to.
Yeah.
Pretty immediately, I accepted my offer and was ready to go. So it wasn't too hard of a decision when I got my acceptance.
Where else did you apply though? I'm just curious.
I applied to, I think, too many safety schools. So I applied to like UVic, Dalhousie, as like safety ones. I got into those pretty early.
I like how those are becoming safety schools.
Yeah. So I mean, but they're great schools, but it just, like I could have gone into more prestigious schools and things that were more like aligned with my interests. So I also applied to business programs at McMaster and Laurier, which aren't super well-known schools, I think, in BC, but they also do have really good business programs, and they've got good placements, and like they've got a good name brand in Ontario and Toronto specifically.
Right.
So I also applied to those schools, and Queen's Commerce, which I didn't get into, but also a great school.
So you're talking about specifically Bachelors of Commerce, not MBAs, because that's different, right?
Yeah, well, Bachelor of Commerce is like the undergraduate level business degree. MBA is something you do later in your career.
I see, like a master's.
Yeah, well, it's a master's program, but also you do it usually not right out of undergrad, but usually you take a couple of years to gain some work experience, and then you go and do your MBA. But yeah.
So you didn't apply to any other faculties. You're pretty set on business.
Yeah. So for UVic, I actually applied to the Faculty of Social Sciences as economics. And basically my thinking with UVic was I would go there if my end goal was just to like go to law school. Right. Because I was kind of debating between doing arts and law school.
When was that you were debating?
That was like earlier in the year, where it was something that I was thinking
First year?
about. Yeah,
or grade 12?
In grade 12, I'm thinking about this. And I was thinking UVic, I could probably go for a higher GPA. Yeah. And the business program at UVic, it's a good program, but it wasn't really what I was looking for.
Okay.
So yeah.
So were there some sort of unique features or aspects of the McGill school that kind of swayed you?
Well, McGill is interesting with its business program because it's got a lot of variety in the kind of classes and specializations you can take as a member of the faculty management.
Right.
Whereas other schools, it's really focused on like finance, accounting, marketing, kind of like the stereotypical business majors that anyone would think of. McGill's got a lot more options in terms of the classes that you can take. And the kind of coursework that you cover. Like, for example, I'm like a major in economics, which generally isn't something you can do in the business faculty.
Usually that's its own thing, right?
Well, it's usually it's part of the Faculty of Arts. Sometimes you can do like a Bachelor of Science in economics. But it was something that I was interested in, and you can also get those like fundamental business skills at the same time. So that was really appealing to me.
Do you want to make the distinction for us between major and concentration?
Yeah, so the way it works at McGill A major is like 30 credits outside of your general management.
Okay.
So like if you're part of the faculty of management, you do 36 credits of like business courses. So these are things like intro to accounting, intro to finance, operations management, things like
Right.
that. And you do that. Everyone in the faculty who gets a BCom does those courses. But on top of that, you also have to do a major. So, or you do 2 concentrations. And a major is 30 credits. So that's 10 courses over the course of your degree. Focus on one topic. Or you do a concentration, which is 15 credits. So that's just 5 courses on like one specific topic. So it's kind of, you can think of it like a minor. It's like doing a major and a minor.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it quite common to do a minor sort of in this program?
I would say you don't need to, but it's good because you have a lot of electives in business
Right.
outside of your major. Like it's not too demanding to add on a concentration. Like it's only 5 courses. It's one less than like a typical minor because usually minor is 18 credits. So it's pretty easy to add on. It does kind of give you a little bit of an edge, I think, in applications. And
Right.
also it's like 5 courses is just, it's a good like way to like dip your toe into one subject, something that you're interested in, but maybe not so excited about that you want to like do a full major in it.
Right. So you're talking about getting that edge. So are you still thinking about law? Or
I thought about it a lot for the first couple years of my degree. And it's something like I have the grades for it, so I could go for it if I want to, because that's usually the biggest thing is whether you have the grades and also how you do in the LSAT. But I think ultimately, like longer term, for what I want to do, it's not super necessary. And
Right.
I'm enjoying school, but I'm not so excited about doing another 2 or 3 years of school afterwards. And also just like financially, it's a pretty big commitment, right? And it's something I think it's really good. If you're really passionate about law and like the only thing you can see yourself doing in the future is being a lawyer, then yeah, law school is great. But for someone like me who's like, yeah, it would be kind of cool and it would be good to like learn it and good to know it, but it's not totally necessary. It's just not worth the time and the money up front that it would cost for me to go do that.
well, it's good earlier on,
Yeah.
what you want to do.
Yeah.
Some people, they wait till like 4th year and they
Yeah.
kind of kept it narrow and they don't have any.
Yeah. Well, law school, it's really something like it makes sense for a lot of art students.
Right.
But also it's like, it's a very demanding job. And even the education, it's really expensive and it's really competitive. And a lot of people jump into that, I think, without properly thinking about whether it's something they really want to do or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How did you get involved with ConnectUS McGill and the McGill Student Trading Society?
Yeah. So for me, it was like first year, I knew that like one of the biggest benefits of going to a school like McGill, which has got a pretty well-known business program, is that there's a lot of extracurriculars with a lot of really like talented and really experienced people that you can kind of get to know through these extracurriculars.
Right.
So I think that's one thing with business is the academics are important, but really it's like the community you form outside of school and the things you get to do outside of classes that really will teach you a lot about business, because a lot of those you can learn some practical skills and some theoretical stuff, but really a lot of business is just learning how to interact with people and how to solve problems. And some of that you need to do kind of hands-on work. So, in October of my first year, I was really looking at different extracurriculars, like activities fair, that kind of stuff. And like looking at the Instagrams of all the everything and trying to find something that was aligned with my interests. And ConnectUS was something that kind of jumped out at me because it kind of uses like a case analysis, which is, if you're in business school, you'll have heard of like case cracking and stuff. Outside of business school, basically it's like,
I haven't heard of that.
okay, yeah, exactly.
So
It's
what
like
is that?
so it's not something that's common in other faculties, but basically the idea is you get like a case, usually like a 5-page PDF, 5 or 10 pages, and it outlines like the background of a business, and then it kind of outlines some problem that the business is facing. And basically it's like a thought exercise where it kind of gets you to think about businesses in like a critical way, and it kind of tries to get you to like find a solution to the issue that this business is facing. And it's a huge thing at business school. Like people compete in these case competitions. Like they have a team. There's like JDC,
Right.
a whole bunch of stuff where they go compete against other business schools for who can have the most creative solution, right? And it's people take it really seriously. So this was kind of like an intro. It's using that case framework and like kind of the same steps of like identifying a problem, doing like your SWOT analysis, if like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, something you'll definitely hear about if you ever in business, and doing stuff like that, and then using it for an actual client though. So it's doing more like real consulting work. So last year we worked with a nonprofit called Team Unbreakable, which is like a youth mental health kind of thing. And that was a lot of fun. So I stayed with that as a junior analyst. And then this year I'm doing a senior analyst, and we're working with a few other clients.
So in this position, do you actually like go in the field to like these businesses, or is it kind of, remote work or?
No, it's pretty hands-on. So what we did, now that I'm part of the executive team, is over the summer we had a few people like VP external who were focused on finding new clients. Right. So they were like reaching out to different businesses and nonprofits in Montreal and Toronto.
That are struggling.
that have some sort of issue or that are just looking to like, be of service to us too, because it's kind of a two-way thing, right? Where we give ideas, but also we're using this as like as a base to like teach the junior analysts how to solve cases and like how to kind of learn some of those business fundamentals. Because it's not all business students. That's the other thing. It's like people from all different faculties in this club. And then now that we have our client, and we had 5 different ones, and everyone kind of split into teams, then we spent the first semester, so just the last few months, kind of teaching the junior analysts about like the skills that they need, like how to do PowerPoint and just like right from A to Z, right? Just all the basics. And then now we're really working on like doing work for the client. So doing like, I don't know how much I'm supposed to get into it, but but we're doing like market research for like a small business. And so it's like exciting because it's real, right? So it's like using some of the theoretical stuff you learn in business and then applying it to a real world organization.
Was there sort of an application to join this club? Yeah.
So the way it works in most clubs, and this one too, it's like you kind of send in just your resume, and usually they interview everyone. Like every extracurricular that I've gotten involved with, I've had an interview. Unless your resume is really needs a lot of work, like everyone will get an interview. So it's really just about meeting like the 2 presidents, usually co-presidents of the club, sitting down, having a chat with them. They see if if you'd be a good fit with the club, and then you're in. It's a pretty straightforward process though. Like if you apply to enough, like you should get one is kind of the thing.
You just got to start and get out there.
Yeah.
How would you describe the culture in the commerce program?
Yeah. So Days Hotel, it's got a bit of a bad rap on campus, I would say, which sometimes is warranted, sometimes it's not. But like every faculty, I think there's some people who you're going to get along with great, and some people you're not going to get along with as well. And I think it's like that at every business program and at every, at all schools. So really it's about finding people who are like aligned with your interests and have a similar, sense of humor as you and similar personality, and that you kind of click with. And I think you can find them. But in general, I think the culture, like compared to other faculties, I think it's a little bit more competitive. In terms of people are definitely like, some people are looking for top grades and people are looking to like really advance themselves. Like people go into commerce generally with who are ambitious people who have like a plan for what they want to do in the future. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely people who are a bit more relaxed and more like laid back. Yeah. But I think compared to other faculties, it's a bit more like bootstrap.
Right. What are some sort of career interests that maybe some of your peers have? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I think the thing with big business programs in Canada is they really try to kind of streamline their applicants into like consulting, accounting, and investment banking or finance jobs, because those are the highest paying right outside of the gate, and also they're prestigious companies that are good for their like it's good for their numbers too, right? Like they really advertise their placements at like the big 4 accounting firms. Or
do you have a couple names you could give?
Like for firms?
Yeah, firms that sort of hire out of
McGill.
Yeah.
Well, Toronto company. I mean, there's 2 kind of, I'd say like branches. For one is there's like Montreal and European companies, because a lot of the business faculty is made up of people from France specifically, because they get like a reduced kind of tuition rate.
Okay.
So a lot of Europeans, so a lot of people actually go back to Europe or the US and they work there. But really like the big 5 Canadian banks all hire from McGill for finance positions. The big 4 accounting, so this is gonna really test my memory, like PwC, KPMG, and just those ones, like
Okay.
they all hire from McGill. And then like consulting firms, McKinsey, I know a few people who've worked at McKinsey now, and Boston Consulting Group.
Right.
So all the big companies, like, I mean, same with every business program, they're definitely a presence on campus. So there's a lot of like networking events, but also like opportunities to chat with recruiters and stuff. And they really look for people early in their degree, right? Find people with potential, with good marks,
Right.
who are really involved in campus, and they try to hire like right away. And those are really the companies with like the best starting compensation.
Right. See, when I think of business, one of the first things that comes to mind is like investment banking. And
Yeah.
Then Goldman Sachs. It comes right after.
Goldman Sachs too. Yeah, that's one.
So do some of your peers, or do you know some people and it's like, that's their goal? Like get internship, Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think first year specifically, there's really a culture where everyone at least dabbles with the idea of doing investment banking. I definitely did.
it's the med of science, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like medicine, or it's like the law school of arts, right? It's like what everyone wants to do because it just like it makes the most sense in a lot of ways because you make like a shit ton of money right out of the gate.
Yeah.
It's prestigious. All the smartest people in the program are going into that, and it's very easy to get wrapped up in kind of that like I want to go do investment banking in Toronto. I want to work for RBC and do all this stuff, which is good, and it's good for some people. Some people are really would fit in great, but a lot of people say they want to do that, and me included, like they think they want to do that, but then they realize it's like not quite for them because those jobs, they pay a lot, but they're also a huge time commitment, right? And if you're working like 70, 80 hours a week somewhere, you have to really love it if you're not going to get burnt out in a couple months, you know? So ultimately for me, it wasn't something I'm passionate enough about to really put that time into. But in general, I think finance generally and investment banking specifically is definitely like the goal for a lot of people in the program. And I think as I've kind of gone through it a little bit more, even like second year, people are already starting to kind of like diversify in what they're looking for. But usually like with the people who are really smart and like kind of the top of their class, generally they're looking for management consulting. So like McKinsey or BCG or those kind of firms, or investment banking. So that usually means Toronto, like one of the big 5 banks.
Has there been any specific learning moment that has sort of shaped your academic or career aspirations? Maybe in first year, maybe as a class or professor? Or...
For me, I think over the summer, like doing an internship with like a company and working kind of in like a technical role made me realize that I just have a lot more of an interest in like tech specifically compared to finance. So like finance is something that like, it's interesting and I like, you know, following the stock market, and I find all these things are definitely interesting to me, but I don't love doing it to the same degree that I love doing like tech work. So like over the summer I was working with like an ERP system, which is kind of like basically it's like the main IT system for a whole organization. And doing that and really getting involved in that really kind of changed my thinking about why I was attracted to business and what I wanted to do going forward. So that kind of led me to like declare my concentration in IT management, which is basically just like kind of gives you a broad overview of like different coding languages and like database management software and things like that. And that's really something that like really got me excited, and I really enjoyed doing like a JavaScript coding class this year. And that kind of stuff really, it gets me more interested than just finance in general. So I don't think it was one thing so much as it was like just over the course of my like, coursework and jobs and just talking to recruiters and stuff, I just kind of realized that like the typical investment banking route isn't quite for me. And it's not something that I don't think I could do. Like, I think if I really put my energy towards it, I could break into these companies and like do fine. But like longer term, I just don't think I have the passion needed, because I think these kind of careers, same with like going to med school, going to law school, or going into finance, like those are things that you really need to love with all your heart in order to like be successful at it going forward and not get burnt out. And I just didn't have the passion for it, right? Which isn't to say I'm like disappointed, because I still enjoyed I've gone like I still find it interesting, and like for some people really it is great, but for me like my interests just like lie elsewhere.
That's cool you figured that out again, like earlier on. When did you have to choose, you know, this sort of concentration?
Yeah, well, I've already declared mine. I did it over the summer going into my second year, but I also didn't need to right away because because the way the business program works, at least for someone like me who's coming from out of province and who didn't do like IB or many AP credits, is you do a year, they call it U0, before the actual business classes start, where you're doing a lot of electives and some like basic kind of pre-business courses. So like calculus for management, and like there's like a linear algebra and probability class you take, and like an English like business writing course. And you do that basically because in Quebec, they finish high school a year earlier than us. Then they do 2 years of cégep, which is a kind of college courses. So it's almost like doing like 2 years at Langara, right? But the classes are maybe a little bit
Is it
easier.
at McGill or
No, so this is something everyone in Quebec does.
Okay.
You can do it like they have like little kind of community colleges all around.
I see.
And they do that. So, but then when they go into university, they do a 3-year degree that would be starting during my second year. So people from out of province, like Canadian students who are applying, are coming in a year behind all of them. So you can have a first year of electives, like general coursework. So I did that first. And then now this year, I'm only just starting with like the core business courses, they call them. So it's like stats, accounting, finance, kind of things that you'd expect. And that basically takes up a full year of coursework. So really, I don't really start with my major requirements until the third year. And third and fourth year is where you have a lot more freedom in your degree. So you can like declare your major now, and it does impact some of the courses you choose, and definitely might impact some of like the professors you choose to go with. But ultimately, like you could, like I could change it this summer, and it wouldn't have a big impact. Like I wouldn't need to
Change
take
your
it in.
major and concentration.
I could change up my whole degree, and like I could do something completely different, and I would still be able to finish in 4 years.
Okay. You sort of talked about how, you like all the opportunities that exist at McGill. What's, your favorite part of your degree?
Yeah. In terms of program, I mean, I really like the flexibility that McGill has in terms of like coursework. Like the ability to do courses in different faculties was big for me. And also the way that the program's structured, where you can really get a good general degree and you can really learn like a little bit about everything, which is kind of nice, especially like nowadays, with like AI and everything. Like sometimes a lot of those specialized jobs, they're a little bit risky, right, going forward. And it's something where you can't necessarily bank on like a certain job existing in 10 years from now, right? And learning a very practical skill, as useful as it might be now, it might not necessarily have the same value in a few years. So I think nowadays, there's a lot of value in getting kind of a general degree and learning a little bit of everything and seeing how everything kind of works together, because those are the kind of things that organizations are going to need like forever, right? They're always going to need someone who can put the pieces together. So I think that's kind of a value in terms of the coursework. And then in terms of like outside of the classroom, I think McGill does a good job of encouraging students to start clubs. So there's really like a ton of extracurriculars. And I think maybe it's something with the student body too, where people are a bit entrepreneurial, but people like to start clubs. So there's always things popping up. And like, I've got a friend who's like starting a new club that like I'm looking to get involved in. And so there's lots of things like that happening on campus, especially with the business program, but also open to like everyone, and that's definitely a big, that's like a big benefit to the program. It adds a lot to your coursework, is having those kind of opportunities. Yeah.
And I think you need to start early with those opportunities, because that, is probably what's going to help you get an internship probably later.
Yeah, it's good to start early. I don't think people should be dispirited if they don't start early, because it's never too late to kind of get involved. But doing that early, it just helps you figure out what you're interested in and what you're good at early on, which is helpful, because then by the third, fourth year, you're doing the extracurriculars and you're focused on things that are going to be the most helpful to you, right? And you're not just doing things for the sake of putting them in your CV. You're doing them because you're actually going to get a lot of value from them.
And I think when you start sort of a new extracurricular or activity, you should keep that in mind, not just, pad your resume. Try to do something you actually are interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest challenge so far that's come up? Is there something?
I'd say it was a bit of a challenge for me was moving to a new city. I think that's something that's kind of universal for like a university experience for people going out of province. So that definitely took a little bit of, moving out of home. I think universal human experience, everyone's got to do it at some point. And doing that is it's something you learn a lot from too. I would say, alongside your coursework, there's a lot of experience to be gained in terms of like making a new group of friends and like leaving your home behind and starting fresh somewhere else.
Cooking your own meals.
Cooking your own meal, learning to cook, doing your laundry, all these like very basic things. Doing them all at once and starting doing them for the first time, it's a big adjustment, but it's something that I think it teaches you a lot.
Were you on res first year?
Yeah, so first year I did residence.
Okay.
Like upper res is kind of the most, like the way it works at McGill is they have like new res. So they have these kind of like hotels that they've converted into residence buildings, and it's like you're living in a hotel room. So it's kind of a different experience, but I did upper res, which is up on the mountain, and that's like kind of your typical like American style dorms.
Okay.
So, communal bathrooms, no roommate for me, pretty small rooms. I had a nice view of the city. So
that's good.
That was fun, but
communal washrooms,
co-ed communal. So
wow.
That took some, that wasn't the most comfortable, but it's fun. Honestly, doing residence, I recommend because it's something that it allows you to meet a lot of people, a lot of interesting people from all over the world too, who are all kind of pushed together into this one building. It's fun, and it kind of makes the transition a bit easier too, I think.
So now you're off campus with some roommates.
Yeah.
Are you far from campus or?
No, so I live just right on campus with two people from, like they were on my floor. So it was pretty easy to move in. We're used to living in
I'm moving out. You're moving out.
Yeah, exactly. We moved right into the same spot.
Yeah.
We're right near the gym. It's just kind of like the student ghetto. And that's kind of where most people go. But also what's nice about Montreal is it's a big city with like a lot of different neighborhoods, and you don't necessarily have to be on campus. Like you can be kind of further. Like I've got a friend who lives like way down in like Griffintown, which is like way out there. It's take a metro to go see him, but it's also like a cool part of the city that I wouldn't have gone to otherwise. So there's a lot of different neighborhoods to live in, but I think most people kind of stick near campus just for convenience.
Is there a name for these? Like in New York, they have boroughs,
Yeah.
Is there something like that?
Well, they have that in Montreal. They have boroughs because it's technically not all one city. Like there's different municipal governments all across the island of Montreal. So yeah, like there's the different neighborhoods are like, they can be quite different in a lot of ways.
It's really cool how the university's downtown.
Yeah.
Going to UBC, you have to commute. I'm not going to complain because, we have good transit.
Yeah.
But it's not downtown.
Yeah.
So what's that like, going to school downtown, living downtown?
Well, it's kind of that's definitely something that drew me to McGill in particular, because the way like the campus is set up, it's right downtown. So like you walk from your class in 5 minutes, you can be in like the Eden Center. You can be at the like top, 5-star restaurants, and you're pretty close to the water too. You can walk down to Old Montreal. So that's cool. But also when you're on campus, the way it's designed, it really doesn't feel like you're in a city. So when you're on campus and you're in the library, like it really feels like you're on your own campus, and there's kind of that campus bubble. Part of it is also because it's all French all around, and then the campus and like kind of the neighborhoods around it are all English. So it kind of creates a bit of a bubble, and like everything you need is around there. So it almost feels sometimes like you're not in Montreal, like you're not in downtown, even though everything's so close, which is nice, which I appreciate because, it's like relaxing, and there's not like traffic all around you or anything like that.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the next section I want to get to is about sort of the application process. With McGill, it's a little different. Yeah. Can you walk us through sort of the initial steps and applying?
Yeah. So McGill is a really simple application process. It's just, assuming they haven't changed it too much in the last few years, it was the 5 highest academic courses. So they have a list on their website for BC education, everyone else, which courses are considered academic. And then you need obviously English 12, you need pre-calc 12, and they take the top 5 with that. And then the cutoff was like 94, 95 when I applied. Might be a little higher or lower now. I think it kind of varies depending on how many applicants they get. But it was really simple. It was like just kind of going onto their website. You create an account. You pay $125. Fill in your name, basic information, and then your school will kind of send off the transcript. So it was the simplest application I did, and it's even for business program, because most business programs, they incorporate kind of like what UBC does, where they have a like personal statement and a list of your extracurriculars. McGill has nothing like that. which I don't know if that impacts maybe like the kind of people who apply. You might get more like bookish kind of people who are really academic focused at McGill compared to maybe Queen's or Western, where they take kind of a more like holistic admission process.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no interview then?
No, there's nothing. It's the simplest application you could possibly
No entrance exam?
Nope,
Nothing.
No, nothing. And the other thing is you apply to you get 2 programs for free. So I also applied to arts, just as like a backup. And I got into arts like a few months before I got into business. And yeah, so
what advice would you give to, prospective students going through applications now? Is there something you wish you would have known?
Yeah, I think one thing I did right was taking calculus, even though it's not a required course. One thing that's maybe surprised me a little bit was how much math is involved, especially this year for my program. And I think if your school offers calculus, it's worth taking that, even though it's not a required course, especially if you can take it the second semester, where by the time your final grade comes out, you've already got your acceptance and you're already set to go to McGill, because then it really does teach you a lot, and it'll make your first year, I think, a little bit easier. If you kind of have those fundamental calculus skills.
Yeah.
So I think taking courses like that are hard and challenging because that'll set you up for university, but also because it's just grades, taking a couple classes that are considered academic that you can do really well on can raise your average. And if McGill is really what you're set on, taking something like History 12, right, or Law 12, I know it's not that hard to get like a high 90s score. Doing something like that can just help raise your overall average, because I know people who I think were probably as smart or smarter than me who had a lot harder of a course load in grade 12 who didn't get an acceptance because they're taking like biology and chemistry and those things which they didn't really need to take if they're going into business, and that kind of ended up lowering their average, right? And it resulted in them not getting an offer of admission, which is kind of unfortunate that they don't take into account the difficulty of courses that you're taking grade 12, but yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
When I look back to like high school, I kind of wish we would have got more exposures, like sort of career days, where people come in, because the people they brought in were just not realistic careers. Like, respect, of course, but like they brought, a front desk worker at the community center.
Yeah.
And, that's cool.
Yeah.
Not what I'm trying to go for.
Right.
But they were all kind of along the lines of that. I think the only one that interested me was maybe the police officer.
Yeah, okay.
But I think it would have been of value to bring in somebody who's in business or someone in law or something like that, because I was very focused on science.
Yeah.
And there was sort of that culture, and I sort of grew up in a sort of area where there was sort of that. Like my year, there were very few people who went into business, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good program just because, like, if you look around the world, like, everything is business to some extent, right?
Yeah.
Like, every organization has people managing, has people organizing the finances, has people working in HR, doing some sort of marketing, right? So these are, like, universal functionalities that are across different sectors, right? Like, for medicine, like, like, there's healthcare and there's healthcare workers and there's people doing, like, the technical stuff. But there's also people running the hospital, and there's things like that. And like the people who are selling, like, the medical devices and things like that, like everything has a business component to it. So I think if you're not, I think with business, there's really 2 kind of people who go into it. There's people who are super ambitious and know they want to be an investment banker. They want to work at like a, Fortune 500 company, and that's great too. And there's a lot of people who do that and who are great, will be very successful. But there's also people, I think, who are not super sure about what they want to do, and they know they're smart and they know they want to go far in life. And I think for people like that, business is a great degree because it doesn't close any doors necessarily, right? It closes some STEM and like stuff like that, sure. But in general, like there's like the world is kind of your oyster, Like you can kind of work in any sector that you're interested in. So I think I think people going into business I don't think anyone regrets doing business in undergrad, Like it'll teach you what you need to know to be successful in a lot of ways.
And you learn how to learn as well.
Yeah, right.
And interact with people, which definitely people in STEM kind of struggle with.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a lot like those soft skills are really important, right? Like that's something that like people kind of diss on arts sometimes, but learning to communicate, writing well, things like that are really important, right? Especially like further along in your career, right?
Yeah.
Once you've moved past kind of the brute force and like the technical job and you become more of a manager, that's when you need to know how to like communicate your thoughts and how to write out, well-drafted emails and stuff, assuming ChatGPT doesn't like take that over, like a lot of those skills are important to develop as well. And one thing with business is that it gives you kind of a bit of both, right? Where you get kind of the like quantitative side of things where you learn accounting and stats and like that stuff, but it also gives you a little bit of the opportunity to kind of develop some of those soft skills and some of those communication skills, which are also important. Like it's important to have both, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you've had this experience. I certainly have, but sometimes you'll speak with someone and, they'll ask what you're studying and like, I'll tell them chemistry and then who knows what they're in, but they'll always come off like, oh, like, what are you going to do with chemistry? Yeah. But it's like, well, what are you going to do, with biology? Yeah. Yeah. But I think you have to sell yourself on the skills that you're learning. Yeah. I mean, you'll get a business degree and maybe you kept it really broad and it's not super specific, but if you learn to communicate and sell yourself on the skills that you have learned and communicate that's huge.
Yeah, I think, I think people put a lot of premium on their undergrad degree. And I think for some people it really matters what they study. For some people, I don't think it really makes a big difference, right? Where if you're like an outgoing person, you're smart and you're ambitious, like you can make any degree work for you, right? And that's kind of the idea. It's like getting a degree to work for you. Yeah. So, you go to university, I still think it pays off. It'll pay you dividends in the long run, right? Where you'll develop like good time management, social skills, things like that. And I think there's a lot of skills that you'll get with any degree, but it's just with certain degrees in certain fields, it becomes a little bit harder to get your foot in the door, and it becomes a little bit harder to kind of sell the skills, right? Like you're saying, selling the skills that you've actually developed over the course of your degree. So with business is like, I'd say that one of the biggest benefits is it's respected in the workforce, right? Maybe because a lot of people have taken business or whatever the case, where it kind of helps you get that initial like from the door, it can get you the job that you want pretty quickly. But also if people are studying poli-sci or they're doing biology or some chemistry or anything like that, and you wanted to work in business, like there's nothing stopping you, right? And especially now, like a lot of banks and finance firms are actually looking more towards some of those more quantitative fields like physics and computer science, because for some of those positions, they'll have like, 200 finance majors applying and they'll have like maybe 6 or 7 comp sci majors, right? And if you show that interest in business, having a different degree that's different from what every other student has can kind of differentiate you and can kind of help you get that land. It's not limiting. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Now, okay, we won't dive into this too deep, but in sort of your firsthand out of province experience, what is the general feeling and consensus around the large tuition hikes?
Yeah, so I won't get too much into the politics of it. Yeah. Don't want to flag the podcast. But it's pretty...
Let's get your unbiased,
uncensored opinions. Yeah. So I would say in terms of just the impact that it's going to have on the school, it's it's negative for sure, but not existential. For some schools, it kind of is existential. Like Concordia and Bishops is getting, I think, they're not going to be impacted by the tuition increase. Concordia, it's not good for. It's really gonna hurt their admissions and their reputation as a school. McGill has enough of that name brand going back far enough that I think it'll still continue to have a lot of admissions.
People are still going to pay.
People are going to pay what it is.
Yeah.
It's just that some of the higher caliber people who maybe can't afford this tuition, can't afford McGill with a tuition increase, it'll dissuade them. And it also has a bit of a financial impact on the school where it's just going to result in lower funds for research and salaries and employees. So like TAs and everything will be impacted. So I think...
So less people are going to come like to do research.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the concern long term. So already admissions are down 20%, which isn't good. I mean, maybe if you're applying and you're willing to pay it, it could be a little bit easier. But I think the biggest impact it's going to have is more in the academics in terms of like people like grad students who are going there for research. They're really going to feel the brunt of this. for undergrads in certain programs, it shouldn't be as big of an issue. So for like even with the tuition increase, doing your commerce degree at McGill will still be less than doing it at Queen's Commerce, right? And you're getting a similar, or I think it'll still be less than doing it at Western too. So you're getting a similar level of education as those schools, and you're paying kind of similar rates, right? So if people are willing to pay $20,000 to go to Queen's Commerce, they'll probably be willing to pay the same to go to McGill Commerce. But it's definitely not good if you're coming to school to do like STEM research, or you want to work, you're doing arts, and you're trying to find like an affordable education. That's really the people who are going to hurt the most from it. But long term, it's not good. So
I'm curious how it's going to affect their ranking.
Yeah, probably. I don't think it. I don't know. It's really hard to see how they're gonna how they're gonna react to this, and how they're gonna like adapt to it, and also how far the government will take it. Right. To what extent will they find other ways to kind of counterbalance it, where they can maybe have like their messaging about the tuition increase, but also like find ways to make sure the impact on the school is not quite as hard. But we'll see. We'll have to see what happens. And I mean, the thing is, it's a good school, and it's been around for hundreds of years. So like, the school should be able to make it out okay. But it will have some negative consequences in the long term for sure.
I wonder if there would be a way to like incentivize, grad students and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. They've introduced, at least for undergrads, they've introduced like a $3,000 scholarship to help kind of for Canadian domestic students to kind of help counter kind of the burden of the tuition. But there's also could be potentially like students will have to reach an intermediate level of French in order to get their degree at McGill. And that's something that could also be difficult, especially if you're coming to McGill to do engineering or something like that.
And you've never done French. And
you've never spoken French, right? Then you're might have to take a 5th year in order to get to that level, right? And so that's really also a big challenge. But, if you speak French, and like if you went to, we both went to French immersion, right? So if you can speak French at an intermediate level, and if you qualify for the scholarship, I think McGill still is a great option, right? And I don't think it's going to necessarily ruin the school by any means. So, yeah.
Now, I want to discuss your approach to studying.
Mm-hmm.
What are some study techniques you brought into uni that you quickly found just didn't transfer? And what do you do now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say in university, it becomes the biggest thing is time management. That becomes, I think, the biggest challenge compared to high school. So, the content is more difficult, but really the big thing is you have to balance a lot more, right? So you got 5 like quite content heavy courses. So it's finding ways to study efficiently is big, because if you're rereading your notes over and over again, eventually it might start to stick and you might start to remember everything, but it's just not a very efficient way to do it, right? Whereas if you're doing like active recall, you're covering and trying to remember things and doing flashcards and all that, it maybe takes a little bit more time right off the bat, but ultimately will kind of help you learn these things quicker, which is really important, because then it allows you the time to focus on all of your other courses too, right? And you're not just balancing coursework, right? If you're in business or other programs, you might be balancing extracurriculars and also like the social aspect, which is really important of your first few years at university, and also like living on your own and cooking, right? So you got a lot of stuff going on, and it feels sometimes like there's not enough hours in the day, right? So it's finding ways to just efficiently study is really the biggest thing, and just staying on top of your readings. And that's the other thing, is like not falling behind, right? So in high school, I think like you can take a few weeks off, you can fall behind in your work, and then before your exam, buckle down, learn it all quickly, and you'll be fine. University, I don't think it works like that, because there's so much content happening each week that if you take a week off, it can become a lot harder to catch up, and then you get into kind of a negative spiral, right?
Yeah. Are you catching up on recorded lectures?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like it's just a big time commitment, and it's finding a way to like work with that. That's the most important part.
I think the way you study too depends on the course and sort of what's being taught. So being in economics, there's sort of some more math and maybe some other business courses. Are there sort of problem sets they assign? How does that work?
It's not as many problem sets as I'd like. I'd say like they post sometimes that's the other thing, which is important with the university is like for something like, like economics or any kind of math course or any quantitative subject, the only way to learn is to just do practice problems, right? Over and over again until it's second nature to you, and then you can do them in your sleep. But sometimes with university, I've noticed, maybe this is maybe just a McGill thing, I don't know, but I find that profs sometimes don't post enough practice stuff. And so then the challenge becomes finding resources online that will help you kind of get to where you need to be and allow you to spend the time like practicing your problems over and over again. So especially for economics, for me, I've been like using like MIT OpenCourseWare or OpenCourseWave and things online and doing that in order to just keep practicing and try like kind of working your brain in different ways, like find new ways to solve problems and really understanding the content like in and out. And I think that really helps you.
Do they like giving sort of short answer questions or more multiple choice or essay?
It really depends on the course. I find there's a bit of a mix in business. Like often they'll have like work like a textbook, and the textbook will have like practice problems at the end. For example, like accounting, like they'll have a bunch of questions about like creating a balance sheet, right? And you just do it over and over again, and then you can remember all the order of everything. And like stuff like that, or finance, where it's like a lot of rules and formulas that you have to know when to apply them in which context. So that stuff, it's just doing it over and over again through like different short answer questions. But then there's also more theoretical exams, and those are generally multiple choice. I would say multiple choice, usually a mix of multiple choice and like short answers, where they'll do like mini cases. I've seen those too. Where they give you like a few paragraphs about some sort of problem and you have to solve it with like a quick kind of timed answer.
They sound kind of challenging.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I find like short answer questions and like just doing like writing stuff on a timer is a skill that you kind of have to develop in university.
Yeah.
Like last year I did, because I had a lot of electives. So I did a lot of like poli-sci and history courses, and all of those exams are like you sit down for a 3-hour exam and you've got like 3 essays to write. And it's like, being able to make those like connections in your head really quickly and like figuring out which content is important to include in the essay and like which questions you have to answer, and doing that with a timer going, it's like stressful, but it also is a good way to, I think, to test how well you know the course, because if you really understand the material, it becomes a lot easier, right? To just kind of throw something onto the page and like structure it as you go, compared to if you're trying to learn things as you're doing it, then the time constraint becomes a bigger issue.
So how do you like to manage your time when you're studying? Do you get up early and study, or do you kind of stay up late? What do you do?
It really depends. For me, during courses, like during the actual academic year, I generally get up relatively early. Maybe not any earlier than like maybe more other university students, because a lot of people sleep in. Like I like having my classes in the morning.
Like 8 a.m.
I've got 8:30.
You're a fan of the 8 a.m.s?
I do 8:30 classes.
Oh, 8:30?
Yeah, that's the earliest at McGill. 8:30 or 10. That's when I like going into class, and I like trying to getting things done before like 3 p.m. and then having the afternoon to study, because that's just kind of what works for me. Like I like doing kind of more passive stuff in the morning, right? Where you're in a lecture, kind of absorbing information, or doing my like readings in the morning. And then in the afternoon and evening doing like practice problems and problem sets and stuff like that, which takes a little bit more mental energy. But then during final season, that all kind of blows up and I end up doing a lot of late night studying, and the schedule gets kind of all over the place. But then when I don't have classes, I find I usually sleep in a bit more and like stay up later doing studying. So it kind of depends on the time of year.
So I don't know if this is the right approach to the finals.
Yeah.
What I do though, sometimes when I have like 3, 4, maybe 5 finals, I'll just study for each one at a time. But that becomes a challenge when maybe you have like back-to-back days.
Yeah.
So learning to manage the multiple studies at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I've read some stuff where that actually helps your improvement is like focusing on multiple subjects at the same time. So especially if you can manage to like squeeze it into your schedule, I think it's beneficial to do like, a couple hours of this subject, then you kind of go to the other side of your brain. Like you do 2 hours of math and then you do 2 hours of like writing, and doing that really helps, I think, with like your memory. And it's a bit more challenging, I think, but like because of it's challenging, your brain retains the information a little bit better. So if you can find the time to do that, I tried to do that. But it's easier said than done, right? Where in the couple days before an exam that you're really stressed for, it's hard to focus on other subjects. But sometimes I think you can burn yourself out if you spend too much time on just one thing.
Yeah, and you need to take breaks.
Yeah.
I think people undervalue breaks. I certainly do.
Yeah.
So our next section is about the resources for students. So in your faculty, you have a career management center where you can set up individual appointments with a career coach, and they offer help with resumes, cover letters, job opportunities, and interview prep. Within that, there's the career portal, which connects you with advisors, and there's the Management My Future, which is a portal providing information on employers, job postings, and upcoming events. Is this sort of the main place you'd go to find a summer internship?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the benefits of being in the business faculty is they have a lot of resources that they don't offer to other faculties in terms of career advice and also like recruitment information. So those are good resources for learning about what you want to do. For example, like they have like little PDFs about like what you can do with different majors, for example, right? And they kind of list like the most common like job titles for like graduates in that major, and then also like the big companies that are recruiting. And they do post job postings there, but I find in general like most of the important ones, in general will be posted on Indeed and LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is really important for following up on like internship opportunities and keeping in touch there. You can like for me in terms of recruitment, I found the most useful thing is really just going to like the recruitment fairs, because all the companies that are hiring for McGill graduates will have like booths. They have a day like at McGill, it's called the Jacqueline Fisher Career Fest, and it's open to everyone in every faculty, like any like student at McGill can go. But generally, like more business students will go to those things. But really, like it's something that everyone should go to because it's like they have jobs for everyone. And basically every recruiter will have a little thing and you can go introduce yourself, ask a few questions, make a good impression, smile, stand up straight, give them
Wear
a good
nice clothes,
good
handshake,
nothing
sissy.
some eye contact. And you just chat. And honestly, it's great. It's a great resource for students because students will go and they'll kind of figure out what they want to do. They hear about different jobs and they'll go, okay, well, this is something that would really excite me, right? And this is something I think I would fit in well with. You can ask for the culture. But alongside that, where you're kind of learning what, different companies and different jobs that are out there, you're also like kind of, you're introducing yourself to recruiters, the people who are going to be interviewing you possibly for your job, connecting with them on LinkedIn and getting their emails, whatever you need, and just kind of keeping that conversation going. And once you have their contact, like following up with them and just staying in touch, right? And then when there is opportunities, if you know someone who works at the company who can kind of vouch for you, that really goes a long way in terms of getting your resume past the
seen.
Getting it seen, right? Because that's the thing. Like a lot of if a lot of those competitive internships will get like hundreds of applicants, right? And sometimes they'll look at your resume for like 10 seconds, right? And they'll make a decision. And if you don't have much extracurricular experience or you never had an internship before, it's not necessarily like, even if you're a great candidate, it's hard to really convey that with your CV. So if you've met someone and they can really say like, yeah, I've seen this person, he seems curious, he seems like an interesting guy, then that can help get your resume to the hiring manager. So I think going to those career festivals, and it's not even just the career fest, like even all throughout the year, I've seen like they've got booths set up or they have networking opportunities. So staying up to date on social media about like what's out there and which firms are coming to visit, I think that's really good. And just honestly asking them like straight up, like, okay, when are you posting a job? And also like, what are you looking for in your candidate, right? Like what should I highlight in terms of my experience and my cover letter and my resume?
And I think they'll be prepared to answer that too.
Oh yeah, because they want the best for you, right? They want to find good, and it's just as challenging to find like quality candidates
as it is internships.
Yeah, as it is to find a good job, right? And the reason they're at these schools is because like there's a lot of demand for smart, ambitious students. So if you can like really convey that you have the attributes that they're looking for, they're like really happy to have you, right? And it's like a net positive for them. So I think it's going to those recruiting things and talking with recruiters. Like I think some people may be surprised by like how easy it is to like chat with them and how much information they're willing to give you, right? Because they might straight up tell you like, oh, you have this experience. Oh, you should highlight on your resume. Like that's going to be a big benefit to you in the interview process.
Yeah. And I think you have to think of it as well as, you know, you're not trying to be the same as the next person talking to them. You're trying to go in there and be different, you know, make a different impression, you know, ask a different question.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And, you know, it's like differentiating yourself from other people is big, and doing that in person, it just is a lot easier to do it. It's not impossible to do it online, but it's just a lot easier to do it in person, right? Because honestly, like the quality of people, like sometimes people like, a lot of people just don't go to these things. They don't show their face, right? And I don't know who said it, but it's like showing up is like half the battle, right?
Yeah.
And that's like really true in terms of recruitment, I think. I think the people who really get those jobs are the people who've asked the right questions.
Is there sort of a co-op program equivalent where you could take 16 months and work an internship in your program?
Yeah, so McGill, I think it's common for most of the kind of bigger universities in terms of business programs out east. I know UBC has a co-op program for its business school, but there isn't like a proper co-op student. So you can do internships and you can take semesters off, but you're not going to get credits for your internship at McGill. So it isn't necessarily like taking a 16-month internship. You can do it, but you have to be aware that it's pushing your degree back, right? Yeah. So you can take 16 months off and just, you know, you take a semester off. It's not a big deal, but it's not something that like, I don't think many people do. Some people do. Like I know people who have taken 8-month internships, but the standard thing people do is take a summer internship.
I think that's a minimum though, you know, like you need to do that.
Yeah, I think for certain careers, it absolutely is necessary.
Yeah.
If you want to work in investment banking, like you need to do a summer internship. It's like there's no other way, because that is how they recruit for investment banking analysts, right? Is they look at their intern class and they go, okay, who's good? Who are we going to retain? So for certain things like that, you absolutely need to. For other careers, I don't think it's as necessary to get into it right away. So if you want to work in something that doesn't have quite as structured of a hiring process, you can honestly, I think you can travel over the summer. You can work at an ice cream shop. You know, you can do kind of more relaxed things, and I don't think it's going to hurt you in the long run. But the value of an internship is it really gives you a better idea of the workforce and what you're looking for and what you're good at, right? And it really helps you with that, especially for people who aren't sure of what they want to do. It can kind of help clear up kind of the fog and help you realize what you actually want to do with your life. So there's definitely a lot of value in an internship, but people put a lot of stress on it as like the end all be all. Whereas I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think it's a prerequisite for success, right? It can definitely help, and successful people often are going to be doing internships. But if for whatever reason you can't do it, like maybe with your course load, you can't find the time to like take a full summer off. You have to do coursework over the summer or something. It's not something that's going to inhibit you necessarily for most careers, right?
I think though, if you plan out your degree early on and you're like, okay, this summer I'm going to do this, because I also think when you graduate, nobody really talks about this. But when you graduate, if you don't have any experience, and there's like a bunch of people who don't have experience and you're all applying for the same job, that one guy who has those two experiences, he may have an edge. Yeah. You know?
No, it's definitely for sure. Like it's definitely a value add, right? It's like something that's worth doing if you have the opportunity, it's definitely very beneficial.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it's not so much just doing any internship at all, but in business, there's a lot of pressure on, at least in like Des Hotel, there's a lot of pressure on like certain internships, which are really prestigious.
With certain companies, or certain types of internships.
Right. So like I would say like with certain companies, right? So like internships with like the big four accounting firms or like an investment bank, right? Those kind of things, there's a lot of pressure on, and people think like, oh, if I don't do this internship at Goldman Sachs, my life is over. I'm going to work at McDonald's, you know? It's like, that's kind of like, people are a little existential about it. Where sometimes it's like, okay, there's a lot of successful people who, you know, don't get their first like quote unquote real job until they're in like, you know, till they're like 3 years out of university, right? And internships are definitely, they're helpful, and it's good to like kind of develop those skills early, but there's also a lot of different paths to success, I think. And I think for everyone, it's important to find your own path to get there, right? But the internship, I think honestly, the biggest value you can get out of it is meeting the right people and getting a better sense of what you want to do. And those things are like really immensely important. But also, I think you can do that. If you really put in the work, you can do those things without an internship, right? Like you can meet the right people just by networking really aggressively, right? And like really like putting yourself out there and trying to like just like form those connections. And I think you can figure out what you want to do by similar like talking to people who are in the fields, right? And like just really getting a good understanding, like what does a day-to-day look like for you in this job? And chatting with those people, like that can give you a good understanding. And doing it yourself, obviously it would be better. But also if that's not available for someone, or someone isn't successful in getting an internship, I don't think you should necessarily give up, right? I think you should look for other ways to kind of get the same experience.
I think something too, I agree with that. I think something that's very underrated is reaching out to people on LinkedIn. People are avid on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And if you've found someone who's in a position, who's maybe 5-8 years ahead, but is where you want to be, reach out to them. And I have some friends who've done that, and they've set up a Zoom call, they've talked with them. That's huge. Like imagine how much time that saves.
Well, I think especially in business programs, there's a lot of emphasis on like networking. And I remember it's like first year you walk in, everyone's talking about networking, and it's like, oh, networking. It's
how many
like,
hands did I shake?
It's just like, oh my God. And it's like people have this kind of the wrong idea of networking where like it's like they're thinking of it, okay, I'm at this like I'm at like a
gala.
It's a big, or I'm at this big like conference center with like a plastic cup of water, like a lanyard with my name on it. I got all these like stilted conversations, all these random professionals. But really like your network is also just like your friend group and the people in your program. And that extends like for a few different levels. Cause it's like, if you talk with people and you meet people who are in like fourth year. So I've met people through clubs who are like a few years ahead of me and who are doing like great things, and they're interning at these, or they have full-time offers at like companies that will like are interesting to work at and like would be like, really, really great experiences and opportunities. And you can meet those people. And if you just form a genuine connection with them, then like that goes a long way too, right? It doesn't have to be on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn's also great for just finding people. If you don't know someone in a certain like industry, it's a good way to just like really throw your name out there, and you can message 10 people, right? And hopefully one of them is like responsive.
1 out of 10 is like, that's
exactly.
a pretty good
All you need is one
rate.
person to like come back at you and say like, yeah, sure, I'll chat with you for 30 minutes, do a coffee chat. But also you can like reach out, especially in business. A lot of the profs have done work that is interesting, right? Like I've gone out and had coffee with like one of my like IT profs, because he's like worked at a lot of big companies, and he was like a PhD student, right? So he's like a young guy. I got along with him good. So like, you can look around, like it isn't necessary, like you can find opportunities to connect with people and learn in unconventional places, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like LinkedIn. Obviously it's a great resource, and it's definitely worth using and using it to your advantage. But also like keep your eyes out for like all over campus, right? Because you can meet a lot of people that have done like a lot of interesting things, and just like building your network like that organically and like forming real relationships with people will really pay off in the long run.
Well, you've provided a lot of insight today, and I just want to thank you for your time.
All right. It's been an honor to be on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you.